It passes unanimously. Now we are on to the official motion as amended. Are there any comments on the CIP?
Yes, I want to make sure that the $3 million that we just talked about is in this budget.
It is.
Yes, it is. It was as presented initially.
Okay.
Okay.
The fifth, we're down.
The only thing I want to comment on as it relates to the CIP as now amended, this didn't change. This was presented before, and I don't know. I don't know if anyone's left from the charter school community that was here to discuss, but I think it's important to note that the charter school payments in year 2 through 5, there is a $10.9 million allocation. It increases from there up. This is similar to what we approved last year, which had $9.6 million, and I think it's incumbent upon, for reference, that was a forecast and expectation pre-session. So I just, again, to reiterate what I said before is that I think a number of the members said it, is just to raise caution and don't bet on those numbers to be guaranteed funding. So that is in our CIP, but I think it's really, really important that they note that is a potentially fluid number. So that's correct. Okay, so if there are no additional comments, I will take a voice vote for the CIP as amended. Mrs. Brown.
We can vote on it. No, I guess we
Nope, Mrs. Brown. We'll do a voice vote. That's Mrs. Brown.
Yes.
Mrs. Zucker. Mrs. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yep.
The chair votes aye, and the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the next item of new business. If I can find my paper.
I move the approval to advertise all the policy changes of Chapter 2 of our policy board policy.
Library as presented.
As presented, yes.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Are there any comments? Seeing none, board members, please vote on the motion before you. And the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the next item of new business, item number 24.
24, I move for approval of the facilities rental rates for Sarasota County Schools as presented.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments? Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're looking at is a rental rate for gyms and for fields. And the people who are most likely to use the fields are, the camps, the sports camps, there's churches. And a lot of these people put money back into our school. And when I was talking to Dr. Bowden earlier, he gave the example of a church using our facility. They don't like the sound system, so they pay out of their pocket to upgrade the sound system of the school. We get to keep the sound system, so now the school gets the benefit of a sound system, and they're still paying us rent. And so I wanted to make an amendment to the facilities that if somebody spends money upgrading our facilities, that we give them a 50% credit on their rent expenses.
Wait, hold on. There was a motion?
Yes.
A motion.
If I don't get a second, it
I have a motion and is there a second? I will second it for conversation.
Second.
And Mrs. Goodwin. All right. Mrs. Brown?
I wouldn't want to make a blanket that they would get a 50% reduction on the rent. I think it would be determined on what they're spending, and if it's something we need. I would like to allow that flexibility if there was something like that, but I wouldn't want to blanket 50%.
I'm sorry, I didn't make the motion correctly. Dr. Bowden actually had the same issue that you had. Word for word.
I would second those concerns.
I'm sorry.
So.
The motion I meant to make was that they would get a 50% credit on improvements that were accepted by the school.
So you want to withdraw your motion?
I want to withdraw my motion, and I want to put up a new motion that says that we would provide a 50% credit for improvements done by an organization that are accepted by the school. So if the school, I'm sorry, wait a second so I explain it. You want me to go ahead and explain my motion?
No, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So that if, again, that church does that new sound system and the school says, you know what, our sound system is just fine, we don't need you to prove it. If you want to improve, that's on you, they would not get a credit. But if the school said, wow, thank you very much, we were going to improve our sound system anyways, we're so glad that you were able to pay for it, then they would get a 50% credit. So thank you, Ms. Brown. That was word for word for what Dr. Bowden's concern was.
And I hadn't talked to him about it, but okay.
That's a very good point.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mrs. Brown, did you want to confirm?
Up to the cost, the 50% credit up to the cost of the improvement.
Okay.
I think if we give the credit based on what they spent it on, and if it's something we need, then we could look at it.
Thank you. Mrs. Zucker?
Yes, I would not like to limit it to 50% because I have no idea how much what 50% would be. I would just like to leave it flexible, that they will receive a credit on if it's what's needed. I don't want to say you're going to get 50% back. I don't know you're going to get 50% back. I'd leave it up to the schools.
Didn't he say up to 50%?
I said up to 50%.
He said up to 50% because I think the other expense is part of what they're putting in. So I think the up to 50%.
Incumbent upon the board.
Up to it.
And then it's incumbent upon the board's approval.
Or the school. You want
The
board or
school.
school?
Well, that's why I wanted. Is it school?
It's the school. I don't think that needs to go in front
Okay,
of the
no,
board.
I'm sorry. I understood it as the board. Okay. And from a legal standpoint, that gives us
Leasehold
some
improvements.
flexibility. I just want to make sure from a rate standpoint.
I think if you set that in your rate and recognize that there's the potential for a credit under the circumstances that were described, that it's up to 50%, capped by the amount, obviously, that someone puts in, and that it is approved by the school beforehand, then, and that's part of your rate structure, I don't see a legal impediment to that.
Okay.
But what was really key was approved by the school
Right.
beforehand.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Robinson.
That makes me comfortable.
I have you marked here, so did you?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to get there are examples of, the football, the baseball team, the Green Giants, and they spend, the boosters raise money for the batting cages. And then to tell them, now you have to pay us rent to use the batting cages, doesn't seem, but now they're still going to have to pay us rent, but they're going to get a certain credit based upon the batting cages. It only seems fair. They're still going to pay us rent, but it'd be reduced rent to rent the thing that you've already paid for.
I think we need to charge them rent for those batting cages even when they're not using them because those batting cages are still taking up space.
So I like the idea and the innovation, and I think it's a great way to illustrate the collaboration with our community partners. My only question to Dr. Bowden is, we have rental revenue that we expect in a certain amount on our budget. How would this impact that?
Well, it's impossible to determine impact. And so we have set the rental rates to recover the cost, particularly if it's a nonprofit entity. So any discounting of the rent would make a shortfall to on the operating side to pay the electric bill and all of those things. But we're also getting valued assets at 50 cents on the dollar. So I think it flushes out in the end.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Zucker.
I cannot vote for this because it's too uncertain for me. I like things a little bit more concrete. We have enough problem trying to, with our budget, trying to see where we're going to be, where we're going to land, and then we're going to have this. You got batting cages, and I think it's a wrong road to go down.
Mr. Robinson.
Just for those, just talking about the math. So if somebody improves our sound system and spends $8,000 on the sound system I would rather give them $4,000 for an $8,000 sound system than us spending $8,000. It's just the way the math works. If I can get something for half price, I'm going to do it all day long, twice on Sunday. So I think that this is actually a revenue generator because we're going to get things that we want at a cheaper price from the people who are renting the space. And going back to the sound system at the church, they're going to use it on Sunday. We're going to have the sound system the rest of the week. And so they paid for it for 2 hours, and we're getting it for half price. But we also get, not only do we get it for half price, we get to use the thing for the other 6.5 days of the week. So it's from a financial point of view, we make more money because we're paying 50 cents on the dollar. So I think this is a win-win.
So I have a question because I know this actually came up at another school, and I'm looking over there. So my question is, when that occurs, in the past, this has taken place, and we didn't get this, so take this out of the rental rate, but when there's voluntary expenditures that we then own, they have to follow our specifications. They have to follow procurement, all of the various components
They
that.
do not have to follow procurement. They can go and contract with a sound provider. If we're going to continue to use this analogy, they would still have to be permitted and to meet our standards. But if we're not writing a check to the vendor, they would be free to select their own vendor outside of our procurement process. It's their money. But it'd have to be to our standard, and it would have to, if it's a capital improvement, would have to be properly permitted through our construction services.
And there's a process already in place that takes place at the school level.
Absolutely.
Okay. 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 Any additional Any additional? Go.
The only clarification on behalf of staff is there's these donations that have taken place over a number of years. Are we going to attempt to recapture things that were in previous years? So donations from today forward
No pro rata.
are eligible for a credit. I just want to make sure because,
Let's give the finance team a real fun day.
right.
No, I would
Okay.
say this would be future.
Thank you.
Future forecast. Okay. So we will be voting on the amendments. Mrs. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Zucker,
No.
Mrs. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yep.
And the chair votes aye, and the amendment passes 4-1. Now we'll be voting on the motion as amended. Voice vote, sorry. Mrs. Brown, unless there are any comments on the motion.
Yes.
Mrs. Zucker,
I'm voting on the rental rates now.
rental rates as amended with the 50%.
No.
Okay. Mrs. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes, ma'am.
The chair votes aye, and the motion passes 4-1. Moving on to item number 25. Is there a motion?
I move that the instructional classified personnel report be approved as presented.
Second.
For clarification, this has been amended since.
Both amendments are presented, so a motion to approve as
Okay.
presented
Just wanna
would
make sure.
include the original item and both addendums.
Okay, so very good. Sorry about that. So is there a motion and a second?
Yes.
Motion and a second. Any comments? Seeing none, please, members, please vote on the item number 24. This will be electronic vote. Here are clicks. And the motion passes 4-1. That completes our new business items. Are there any comments or statements or, okay, I'm going to move forward. The next announcements, our next policy review work session is September 4th at 4 o'clock. Legislative update meeting on September 4th at 5 o'clock. Next regular board meeting is September 4th at 6:30. Tomorrow we will be meeting in Manatee County with Manatee School Board and Charlotte School Board for a joint meeting starting at 2 o'clock. There are no additional comments or questions. We are adjourned.
Enjoy.
You made it. Some are more exciting than others. Oh, I didn't even mention there